Imagine losing years of hard work and thousands of dollars in feed trying to create the perfect chicken, only to discover you built your entire breeding project on a broken foundation. If you are thinking about crossing your commercial layers or meat birds to start your own bloodline, stop right now. Today we are going to expose the first-generation Mirage and reveal the massive genetic secret that corporate hatcheries don't want you to know. Stick around, because today you will learn how to tell the difference between a true heritage breed and a simple corporate formula. Let's dive in. I've read hundreds of your comments and messages where you share the sheer frustration of trying to lock in a new breed in your backyard flocks. Because of that, I've decided to create this exclusive 3-part masterclass mini-series. In this first episode, we will tear down the F1 myth and corporate genetics. In the second, we'll face the inevitable chaos of the F2 generation. And in the third, we will master the art of backcrossing to lock in your bloodline once and for all. To understand why your crosses don't look like their parents after a while, we have to dive into the biological concept that fools more hobbyists than anything else. We call this the first-generation Mirage, or in technical terms, the F1 generation. When you decide to cross two distinct pure lines or two well-established heritage breeds, the immediate result is almost always a visual and productive spectacle. It's like pure magic in the coop. These first-cross chicks are born with astonishing vitality that makes you think you're a genetic genius. They break out of the shell with incredible force, absorb the yolk sac perfectly in the hatcher, feather out extremely fast, and resist sudden temperature drops much better. When they reach adulthood, their production easily surpasses their original foundation stock. At first glance, it looks like you've created the ultimate super chicken on your very first try. But this biological phenomenon isn't a lucky coincidence. It has a very specific scientific name that you need to burn into your mind as a breeder: heterosis or hybrid vigor. Imagine DNA is like a work crew on your farm. The breed you used as the sire has certain hidden genetic weaknesses, recessive defects accumulated from years of unavoidable inbreeding. The breed you used as the dam has entirely different weaknesses. When you cross these two lines, a statistical miracle happens at the cellular level. The dominant, strong genes from one breed ruthlessly mask and compensate for the recessive weaknesses of the other. It's a genetic spark, a peak of efficiency, where the animal's metabolism doesn't waste energy fighting defects because they are all silenced by genetic dominance. But here lies the deadly trap for your project, and I need you to listen closely. Hybrid vigor is a temporary biological spark, not an eternal flame. It is a fleeting state of genetic excellence that belongs solely and exclusively to that specific first generation. It is not an intrinsic trait that magically passes down to their offspring. Hybrid vigor, by strict mathematical definition, does not breed true and cannot be transmitted to the next generation under any natural breeding circumstances. If you don't understand the complex cellular mechanics behind this first cross, that spark of excellence will die the exact moment you decide to breed those F1 siblings together. Many breeders message me every day asking if they can just go to their local feed store, pick up 100 commercial broilers like the Cobb 500 or the Ross 308, or maybe some production reds from the chick bins, and use them as foundation stock. Basic logic tells us that if you cross high-performing birds, you'll get perfect chicks. However, this is where we need to have some real talk about corporate genetics and completely destroy the commercial bird myth. Those heavy white meat birds or those relentless red layers are not true breeds. They are mathematical biological formulas designed in corporate labs and protected by strict international patents. To grasp the scale of this deception, we have to understand that Big Ag decided decades ago to split poultry genetics into two extreme, dead-end roads: fast meat and massive eggs, completely eliminating the true dual-purpose bird. That corporate divide created the current model, where companies invested millions to isolate specific traits, essentially hijacking poultry genetics. They knew that if they sold you a pure heritage breed, you would never buy a chick from them again because you'd just hatch your own on the homestead. So they engineered the commercial concept of terminal hybridization. They created a bird that is spectacular as a final product, but biologically speaking, it's a reproductive dead end. It is planned obsolescence applied to a living creature. A modern industrial broiler is the master result of a complex four-way cross. This means there are four completely different pure lines secretly involved in its creation. Labs take line A, selected ruthlessly for extreme growth speed, and cross it with line B, which has perfect feed conversion, to produce the hybrid sire. Then they take line C with a massive breast and line D with thick legs to produce the hybrid dam. Finally, the massive hatcheries cross that hybrid sire with that hybrid dam. The final result that comes out of the shell is the commercial chick you buy in boxes of 100. You are looking at a bird that packs the dominant virtues of 4 different genetic families into one body. It is a marvel of poultry engineering, but it is precisely designed to be an athlete that runs only one race, hits 6 or 7 pounds in 6 weeks, and ends up in your freezer. When you try to breed this four-way puzzle on your farm, it violently unscrambles right before your eyes. What you'll see in your grow-out pens with the progeny of these commercial birds will be deeply frustrating and heartbreaking. Since this animal is not a pure breed, it simply lacks the mathematical ability to pass its configuration onto its chicks in a stable way. In the next generation, the genetics segregate into hundreds of failed combinations. You are trying to reproduce a locked padlock, and the corporation holds the only key. You will see scrawny birds with no breast meat, chicks growing at wildly different rates, and extremely high mortality in the first few weeks of life. But the biggest issue is anatomical. The anatomy of an industrial broiler is a silent tragedy for natural backyard breeding. The development of their internal organs simply does not keep pace with their massive muscular growth. Their hearts and lungs are barely large enough to support that huge mass of meat during their short 6-week commercial lifespan. If you try to ration their feed and keep them as adult breeders, you will be incredibly frustrated to see many drop dead suddenly. Flip-over disease, massive heart attacks, or ascites from chronic respiratory failure will show up long before the bird reaches optimal sexual maturity. Their baseline metabolism is redlined to the biological limit, and their bone structure, especially the femurs, was never designed to carry that massive weight for months or years in a breeding pen. The exact same thing happens with commercial layers. Lines like the Isa Brown, the Lohmann Brown, or the Highline are not heritage breeds. They are high-precision genetic hybrids engineered to lay a massive amount of eggs, often over 320 a year, under strictly controlled lighting and temperature conditions. If you make the mistake of breeding them, their daughters will inherit an uncontrollable genetic mess. They won't lay half the eggs their mothers did, and their shell quality will be poor. The overall health of a commercial layer's progeny will be fragile, because their reproductive system isn't backed by the ruggedness of a heritage breed. Big Ag genetically locks these birds through hyper-specialized crossing so that you, the producer, are forced to buy from them every single laying season. They sell you a high-yield animal that is genetically sterile in terms of flock improvement. And this brings us to one of the most expensive traps where hobbyists lose a ton of money and months of hard work: the sex-link myth. The poultry industry sells highly profitable commercial hybrid layers known as sex-link birds. With these lines, you can visually identify males and females by their down color the second they hatch in the incubator. This genetic trick is phenomenal for saving feed, but it has a secret you need to fully understand. This trait is tied to the sex chromosomes, using silver, gold, or the classic barring gene from the Plymouth Rock. It works like a perfect Swiss watch, but only in the corporate labs where two homozygous pure lines are crossed. That visual sexing magic only works once. If you try to breed those auto-sexing hybrid hens in your own backyard with the false hope of continuing to visually sex chicks by color in the next generations, that biological watch shatters into 1,000 pieces. The sex-linked gene gets completely scrambled due to Mendelian segregation in the second generation. Visual sexing of the offspring becomes a total lottery. Females will hatch with male colors, and males will have patchy, messy down. You will start making mistakes when separating the sexes, wasting expensive starter feed on roosters you thought were pullets, completely ruining the space planning, feeder management, and financial profitability of your egg project. This deep conceptual error leads us to the most critical and painful point for any long-term poultry project: quietly bleeding your wallet dry. Trying to lock in a breed using commercial discard genetics is like trying to fill a bucket with no bottom. You are going to invest months of your valuable time caring for chicks that, genetically speaking, are doomed to fail at reproduction. You'll waste electricity on heat lamps, time-cleaning coops, and money on vaccines for birds that are useless as foundation stock. But the real black hole is at the feeder. The accelerated metabolism of an industrial hybrid demands massive amounts of high-protein commercial feed every single day just to stay alive. A meat bird eats to die quickly. Its feed conversion ratio is strictly calibrated for that short grow-out period. If you keep one of these commercial birds alive for 8 months waiting for it to mature, mate, and lay fertile eggs, it will absolutely devour your operating budget. You'll burn a hole in your pocket buying dozens of bags of expensive feed for an animal that will end up dying of a heart attack or producing incredibly weak, defective progeny. In stark technical contrast, the basal metabolism of a heritage breed with proven genetics is completely stable, efficient, and wonderfully balanced. These true heritage birds eat to live long-term, to forage efficiently on pasture, to withstand extreme weather changes, and to produce eggs or meat steadily over several productive years. Real economic efficiency in technical poultry farming isn't measured by how fast one single broiler grows in its first month. It's measured by how much feed it costs you to maintain a healthy breeding flock that gives you uniform offspring season after season without getting sick. So how do we start building this project on an unbreakable bedrock foundation? Understanding the deep technical difference between an unstable commercial hybrid and a true foundation heritage breed is the non-negotiable baseline of all genetic success. Traditional pure breeds, like the majestic Old Line Rhode Island Red, the rugged English Sussex, or the classic Black Australorp, have something in their DNA map that geneticists strictly call dominant and recessive homozygosity. Homozygosity means, in plain farm terms, that their gene pairs for the most important productive physical and behavioral traits are completely identical. That is why when you cross an excellent Rhode Island rooster with a pure Rhode Island hen of the same premium quality, the chicks hatch out as exact replicas of their parents. There is absolute biological predictability in your hatch rate and results. You know exactly what weight they will reach and what color egg they will lay. In contrast, the industrial bird you buy at the feed store is heterozygous to the absolute max. Its DNA is a vibrating chaos of mixed information and conflicting genes that only works harmoniously in that first cross-generation due to heterosis. You cannot, under any mathematical or biological circumstance, build your own stable, long-lasting bloodline on a genetic foundation that was deliberately programmed in a corporate lab to fall apart during natural reproduction. When you decide to work exclusively with historic heritage breeds, you aren't just buying an animal with beautiful plumage, you are buying something vastly more valuable for your homestead. You are buying pure genetic prepotency. In advanced poultry breeding, prepotency is the proven mathematical ability of an elite breeder to heavily stamp its fixed traits onto all of its offspring, easily dominating the weaker genes of its mate in the breeding pen. A good purebred foundation rooster is so homozygous and stable that his genetics act as an unbreakable seal of guarantee in the incubator. He passes on his bone structure, his resistance to local diseases, and his functional comb type without any surprise variations. On the flip side, the four-way commercial hybrid, being genetically unstable and chaotic inside, has absolutely zero genetic prepotency. It can't dominate anything when crossed because it isn't even a faithful copy of its own parents. To create a true new breed or to establish an unbeatable breeder flock, you must start your project with foundation birds that have a documented history and proven genetic stability spanning decades. I'm talking about sourcing pure birds from responsible breeders, animals that strictly adhere to the breed's standard of perfection. These birds are truly stable because their desirable traits have been forged in fire by the ruthless culling of the master breeders who came before us. When you start your poultry project with top-tier heritage breeds, you take back total control of the bloodline and your business. You know exactly what to expect when you open the incubator door. You have a clean, solid, and predictable genetic canvas on which you can begin targeted selection, mold their hardiness, and develop your own recognized family line. My biggest and most sincere technical advice is to invest your initial budget into acquiring an excellent pair or trio of pure foundation stock. Even if these heritage breeds seem to grow a few weeks slower than a hormone-pumped industrial broiler at first, in the long run, they will give you the only real biological foundation to create a flock that stands the test of time. They will be the pillar of a breeding flock that truly carries your signature as a professional breeder, filling you with genuine pride every time you walk into the coop and see the perfect uniformity of your animals performing at their peak, without ever depending on a foreign corporation's catalog again. The F1 Generation Mirage is the perfect trap, custom designed to catch the novice breeder looking for non-existent shortcuts to productive success. Never build your poultry dream on industrial birds, as they are nothing more than temporary corporate formulas designed exclusively for the fast-paced consumer market. Seek out heritage breeds, study their standard deeply, secure your financial investment, and prepare for the real technical fieldwork that will define your legacy in poultry breeding. In our next episode of this exclusive miniseries, we will dive right into exactly what happens when this complex genetic puzzle violently shatters in the famous F2 generation, and I will teach you how to survive that biological chaos to select your ultimate champions through ruthless culling. Have you ever wasted time, money, and feed trying to breed commercial hybrid birds, only to watch them lose all their quality? Let me know your experience down in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe, hit that like button to support the channel, and share this with that fellow breeder who is still crossbreeding blindly. To your success, fellow breeder. Until next time.